Hello everyone, welcome back to a very special video. I'm DTM as always, and with the CYL units about to be revealed, as per tradition on this channel, we will be looking back at all the previous CYL units and be doing a tier list of them. This is something that's sort of a yearly tradition on my channel where we do like a retrospective on these Brave units and see how they currently perform. Spoiler alert, not well right now for most of them, but regardless, it's always good for me to like take this opportunity to like reflect on the trajectory of these Brave units and where they stand now. And yeah, it's like a little fun celebration, and I hope you enjoy. If, as always, if you like the content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all the jazz to help support the channel. Only takes 5 seconds to subscribe, but it truly does help this channel out, and I really do appreciate all the constant support. And yeah, let us begin with the first winner on our list. That is, of course, Brave Ike. Brave Ike is a unit that is very dear to my heart because he was my first +10 5-star exclusive. I think my first +10 overall. And he, along with Brave Lucina, which we will talk about later, basically were the dynamic duo for a lot of my beginnings of FEH since I started around like 2020. So yeah, I do have fondness for Brave Ike. Unfortunately, Brave Ike kind of sucks now. Like, there's nothing really special going on with him. Yeah, a little bit unfortunate that he doesn't really do anything. Like, at this point, you just like slap a rearmed like weapon on him, like Arcane Giant Axe or something, and then just call it a day with like premium skills. But there's not really a reason why you will use him like at all. So unfortunately, he goes into E tier. Yeah, not that good. Like, I don't even know you can't make it work, honestly. Anyways, next up we have is Brave Roy. All right, cool. Next up we have is Brave Lynn. All right, next up we have is Brave Lucina. And yeah, Brave Lucina, again, formed part of that dynamic duo with Brave Ike back in the day, and I still miss those days. Because like back then, the support that she gave, the special acceleration support, was really, really important and really powerful. Now, like, special acceleration is very common, and not even that, but also ways to accelerate your specials. So again, there's not really a reason to use her anymore. These days, you probably just like stick Johanna Lance on her and use her as like a tank, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, she also goes in E. And I am doing this relatively quickly, especially for like these lower tier units, because yeah, we have 32 units to go through, so I do apologize for that, but there's not really anything special to say. Next up we have is Brave Hector, and Brave Hector used to be the Omni tank. I wasn't there when he was released, but I was there when he got his refine, and yeah, once he got his refine, along with the introduction of save skills, he was literally the save to beat, the tank to beat, the armor to beat, literally defining the nukes that were good. Obviously, nowadays, he has kind of dropped off completely. Again, there's not really a reason to use him these days, so yeah, he goes in E. All right, next up is Ephraim, and basically put everything I said about Brave Hector and apply to Ephraim, except like 10 times worse. So yeah, Ephraim unfortunately never got the spotlight of being a good tank, unlike Hector did in the past. I guess there's this like soul taking gimmick, but did anyone actually do that back then? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that sucked even back then. So yeah, E for Ephraim. I guess that's appropriate. All right, next we have is Celica. And Brave Celica is interesting. There was sort of a way you can make her into like a Gale Force unit back then, especially once she got her refine. But honestly, the main problem of using that is that you kind of had to rely on like Ardent Sacrifice stuff and not naturally be able to... Actually, no. The problem is that like her preference is on the beast, so you can't really run Wings of Mercy. And nowadays Wings of Mercy Echo exists, but you can't use it on her because, again, you can't use Echo skills on preference with preference skills. Now, granted, these days the preference skill is not that great, but if you don't use the preference skill, then why are you using Celica, right? So, yeah, that's a rip. Brave Veronica. Brave Veronica, I believe, was like the most powerful CYL 2 unit on release. Basically, everyone chose her, to my understanding. Nowadays, unfortunately, there's not really anything differentiating her between any of the healers that we have. You might as well just run like your free 4-star, 5-star Nana or something, I guess. Because these days, you can probably use like the Arcane Staff or one of the many one of the many inheritable staffs that we have. And they'll perform very similarly, if not the exact same. Yeah, healers these days do have things like Ice Lock and Magic Shield, but unfortunately, Brave Veronica is not unique in that, right? Like, there's a bunch of healers that can do that. So, yeah, unfortunately, there's no reason to use Veronica right now. So, that's an E. Now, next we have is Brave Alm. And Brave Alm is actually interesting to talk about. Brave Alm has like something that's dear to me in my heart in that I did use him a little bit for Gale Force. The true damage that he has, along with like the Wind Sweep, was like pretty strong at busting through like tanks back when I used him. It is hard to use Brave Alm now as in that same Gale Force role, but there are ways you can like theoretically make it work. It will totally not be worth, but you could do like the Ardent Sacrifice and then have him as like a tank buster thing. And these days, the fact that he doesn't get into WOM range easily doesn't really matter that much. Because these days for Gale Force, there's so many ways to get in besides WOM that it's not as important to be able to meet those thresholds. So I guess he got that going. I'm a little bit grasping at straws here, but I do think, unlike the units we have so far, like here, there is like a 0.1% reason to use Alm. So for that reason, he goes into D tier. Again, I definitely wouldn't recommend, but like, it's there, I guess. All right, next we have is Brave Eliwood. And I'll be real, I was never a big fan of Brave Eliwood. I didn't really think he was that strong on release, and the refine and how he performs since hasn't really changed my mind. Yeah, unfortunately, he didn't really have Kanto. The only thing he's known for is being effective against beasts. And when he was released, literally the only beast unit that was relevant is Fallen Edelgard. And Fallen Edelgard sucks as a tank, so, you know. Yeah, he'll be in E. E for Eliwood. Alright, next we have is Micaiah. And Micaiah actually has some use still, I think. At least Brave Micaiah. Like, we've gotten into a point where debuffs are very, very strong. And yeah, Brave Micaiah doesn't exactly have the greatest debuffs, but you could still have like some value in that. And of course, being effective against armors and cavalry units is pretty useful to this day. Granted, again, she's not going to nuke like Black Knight or Rhea or something like that, unless they're like really poorly built. But regardless, like unlike the units in E and F, I do see, again, similar to Alm, like a 0.1 reason to use Micaiah as opposed to like any of these units. So yeah, Micaiah will go here. Honestly, I think I see more value in Micaiah over Alm. Yeah. I guess that's fine. All right, next up we have is Brave Camilla. And Brave Camilla, I still find to be a very fascinating unit because, again, she performs something similar to what Legendary Claude does, in that when you attack an opponent, they and their allies get gravitied, essentially, meaning that you can do like sort of hit and run with a healer, which is really interesting because they get razzle dazzle, so you don't have to fear counterattacks these days. Nowadays, that has slightly fallen off value because a lot of the main saves that we have do have NCD. Granted, there are ways to get around saves with like Elm and stuff, but still, being a healer, being able to do that is not as important anymore. And in addition, we do have a healer special that can inflict gravity now. So Camilla is not the only healer that can do this anymore. However, this does leave Camilla to be able to like run other specials potentially that can have more effects. So I guess that's something. So yeah, I guess we put Camilla down in D just for that. Yeah. All right, cool. Next up we have is Brave Dimitri. And Brave Dimitri, it's interesting. I used to think defensive damage reduction was going to be very, very strong, but it just turned out not to be the case. It wanted to be like speed damage reduction. And obviously nowadays you want flat damage reduction. So the type of damage reduction Brave Dimitri has primarily is no longer that useful. Granted, his refine does give him some really nice boosts in terms of like tankiness and stuff like that, but I don't think it's necessarily enough to actually have any reason to use Dimitri. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not really a reason to use Brave Dimitri as opposed to the more modern tanks that we have, and more modern frontlines that can actually do something besides just tank, you know? You think about like Hector. Hector can frontline, but also apply the healing status, which is obviously very, very strong. You can say something similar to Fallen Male Alir and stuff like that. And compared to like those units, yeah, Brave Dimitri does not have it going on. So yeah, that'll be an E for now. Next up we have is Brave Claude. Oh, Brave Claude. I remember when the healing tank gimmick you had was like actually pretty good, and then Fatal Smoke happened and like Dual Leaf. Yeah, unfortunately history has not been so kind for you. Granted, now Claude does have like in the refine the effect that reduces the impact of Fatal Smoke, but it's just not enough. And like these days, nukes are way too powerful that they can probably just one-shot Brave Claude. So yeah, that's going to be an E tier as well. All right, next we have is Brave Edelgard. And call me biased or whatever, but I actually think Brave Edelgard can be usable in certain circumstances as a tank. Granted, she's not going to tank a unit like young Camilla or anything like that, but she is actually surprisingly tanky against melee threats and can hold her own with those few exceptions. Now, granted, those few exceptions does make it so that Brave Edelgard is like nowhere near meta, but she does still work. And most importantly, that it can work without needing to use an arcane weapon or anything like that, which allows for the fact that Brave Edelgard retains the warping abilities in that weapon. And having an armor with an additional mobility, I still find really flexible and adds some value to that. Like being able to have that warping just removes so much restrictions that you normally have to deal with armors. Like normally you have to either rely on like Sakura status effects or like orders effects or things like that. But with Edelgard, you don't have to think about that. You can like have her with a regular team without any of those effects and just be perfectly fine. So I do think Brave Edelgard still has like some value, more than the units that are currently on the tier list. I'm not saying it's great or anything, but she can be surprisingly tanky at times. So yeah, I personally think I'll put her in C tier. The first C tier. Let's go. Yeah. And when you do run her, you do not use her perf B. You run like Shield Fighter. And basically just run Shield Fighter Pavis. That's how you make her work. And you know, it works. It actually works. Thank goodness for Shield Fighter, you know? But yeah. Anyways, next up we have is Lysithea. Lysithea is interesting because as a nuke, I don't think she really holds these days, like at all. There's a lot of ways you can get Desperation. The damage output is just not there. She does have an interesting capability to self-damage herself, but unfortunately it's not as good as Bernadetta's self-damage that applies to the team, not just herself. So Bernadetta's self-damage, like Winter Bernadetta, is just a lot more flexible than Lysithea and is a lot more chainable than Lysithea. So unfortunately, again, there's not really a reason to use Lysithea these days. So yeah, that'll also go in E. Alright, next we have Gatekeeper. Oh, Gatekeeper. I still have a grudge against Gatekeeper, but I will say Anti-Warp still has a place, especially in Aetherates. In Summoner's Duels these days, you mainly run like Barricade or stuff like that. Although not as common as it used to because there are a lot of pass units that can get through Anti-Warp. In Aetherates though, on like offense and stuff, Gatekeeper still has value over Barricade, like just running Barricade on Milla or whatever. Because unlike Barricade, Gatekeeper's Anti-Warp has the full 4 range against melee units, as opposed to Barricade being reduced to 3. So Gatekeeper does actually have a niche, and in addition, he also applies the healing support and like the drive support and stuff like that. So there are legitimate use cases to use Gatekeeper in your Aetherates team, which is more than I can say for a lot of these units. I'll just say that right now. So yeah, I personally don't like using him, or I don't like him at all, but I can't deny that unlike these other units, he's actually workable and completely usable. So, you know what? He goes into B. Let's go. Alright, next up we have is Brave Marth. And this unit is literally the most hyped up unit I've ever seen, with so many Marth glazers, especially in Joel's Discord channel or server. Like, there are legions of Marth cultists that just loved this unit when he got released and had his refine. And personally, I never really see it. Like, yeah, Vantage is cool, but there's a thing called Hardy Bearing that just gets rid of it. And nowadays, I don't know. I just don't see a use for him. I never thought he was that great on release or on refine, and I think the same applies here. He's just like a normal Godsword tank that just happens to do Vantage. But the problem is he relies heavily on his friends. So like, and this is really common to the most recent Marth alts, like Anniversary Marth. Like, once you deal with his friends, he's like cheapskates. Like, you could just clap him super easy. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into Anniversary Marth, but given that Brave Marth right now is a lot worse than Anniversary Marth, and I personally don't hold Anniversary Marth as high as a lot of people have been saying, yeah, there's like literally no reason to use Brave Marth these days. So yeah, unfortunately, he also goes into E. All right, next up we have is Brave Marianne. And personally, I never got why people, I guess, look down on Brave Marianne on release. People were just complaining about the gravity effect. But at the time, and honestly even now with all the warping we have, gravity just doesn't really matter that much. Especially when you're like dancing someone, most likely the primary initiator, who probably has a way to warp in. The gravity just doesn't matter. And Brave Marianne, like, is a 2-for-1 dancer in that you are able to attack someone and then have another unit like get Gale Force and then attack another one. So for her, just having her, she increases the amount of attacks you can do by 2, as opposed to a regular dancer who can only do 1-for-1, where you don't attack, you just dance, and that one, the person you dance then goes on attack. That's just 1 per unit, right? Granted, these days it's a lot harder for Brave Marianne to do her job because, like, Gale Force in general is sort of been sidelined in Ether Raids thanks to the new Lens Sniper meta we've had for a while. So there's not really a reason for units to go in like you do with Gale Force. However, with Baldur and Hother, I can see Gale Force going back up. And in that instance, I can see people using Brave Marianne again. And of course, in AR Chaos, granted, it's AR Chaos, so it's like super easy, so it doesn't really matter. But like she does circumvent the 1 dancer restriction, so that is pretty helpful there. So yeah, Brave Marianne, there's still use cases for Brave Marianne. It's not as strong as, say, Gatekeeper, I would say. Again, just due to the diminishing of Gale Force and the fact that, quite frankly, Gale Force is just really easy these days with a lot of the units that we have that can do like a bajillion actions, so that you don't really need dancers or units that go in with WOM. Like you think Valentine's Edelgard and Emblem Sigurd, right? So her role as a 2-for-1 dancer in Gale Force has sort of been diminished, but still, like, she can definitely be used in Gale Force. So I definitely think she belongs in C tier. I think probably more value than Edelgard. Yeah, I think that's about correct. All right, next up we have is Brave Eirika. Brave Eirika. So Brave Eirika was like, I think the most common unit from this batch that people recommended just as like a general good option. And at the time, that is true. She was a general good option and a pretty good melee nuke. The problem these days is that, 1, she doesn't have the range to be a good melee nuke. Ideally, you can have 5 range without needing anything else. Something like Brave Seliph, which we will talk about later. But like, unfortunately, Brave Eirika only has 3 movement. Yeah, you can give her Sigurd Ring to give her 4 movement and then have like 5 range. But as we have units with 6 range these days, the 4 range that Brave Eirika naturally comes with just doesn't cut it. And you really need to be able to do that in order to be able to get in, because your opponents, especially in something like Summer's Duels, will have 6 range units that you'll need to deal with. And so, yeah, unfortunately, Brave Eirika kind of fails there. And also, unfortunately, the nuking capability of Brave Eirika is also not that good anymore. We have in recent times been shifting to focus on true damage as the primary way to gain more attack power and be able to get through the flat damage reduction of these tanks. And Brave Eirika, being primarily there, having the damage come from Luna type effects, unfortunately means that she sort of got left behind in this case. So it is a little bit unfortunate. And yeah, unfortunately, there's not really a reason to use Brave Eirika anymore. So yeah, definitely an E tier. All right. The same cannot be said for Brave Chrom. Brave Chrom, what is there to say? Somehow, he keeps getting more and more buffs. He keeps being relevant. And dare I say, as of now, he is the best Brave unit of the current Brave units. And you know why I say that? It's because there are still people legitimately using him, not just as like, it's their favorites or whatever, like legitimately slotting him in to SD teams. That is how prevalent he still is and how good he still is. He gained a boost when Emblem Sigurd there, you can do Gallop, and even though like calves have sort of diminished in recent SDS, like he still pulls a respectable usage rate in SDS. Obviously, SDR is a different topic, but let's be real, none of these units are going to be used in SDR. Except maybe Soren, if like Soren balls come back, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, Brave Chrom is just the perfect unit to be able to keep out the times. The ability to not steal, but like to borrow, share the buffs of your allies means that he will always be able to receive any future positive status effect that IS introduces, which allows him to remain relevant over time. In addition, the stat stacking you can do with stacking bonuses on him. Again, there's no cap to the amount of stats he can gain from this bonus stacking. So he does have the capability to keep up with the increasing stat demands that Fae demands to have relevance as like offensive powerhouse. And obviously we could talk about To Change Fate. To Change Fate is just really, really good. Or I guess a fate change, yeah. A fate change is just really, really good. Not just for the stat taking, but also just for action economy, which obviously in something like Summer's Duels is really, really strong. And so he provides that. And yeah, there's a reason why people are legitimately still slotting him in SDS teams, to the point where he is the most used CYL unit in the last SDS. It's crazy if you think about it. So yeah, by virtue of being legitimately useful in SDS and the most used SDS unit, or the most used Brave unit in SDS, or the last one, yeah, Brave Chrom definitely deserve S. Like, there's actually a reason that you would want to use Brave Chrom, and not just a reason, but a lot of reasons. And yeah, I think that alone makes him an S tier, at least when we're talking about Brave units. So yeah, Brave Chrom still got it. It's kind of crazy to think that this CYL 6 unit that was refined last year has managed to maintain his relevance since his release. I think that's amazing, actually. Brave Chrom stands, we winning. Anyways, next up we have a Seliph. Seliph unfortunately did not share in Brave Chrom's stay and relevance. I remember when on release, he was the unit of the CYL batch of CYL 6, because at the time, being a melee 5-range unit was really, really strong. It meant you actually had to think about melee threats in Summer's Duels as opposed to just ranged threats. Which obviously, in Summer's Duels, you can only have one save, so you can't just run like near save or whatever, right? And that combined with Brave Seliph's Miracle made him really hard to kill on retaliation. So yeah, at his release, Brave Seliph was the CYL unit to get of the CYL 6 batch. Now, unfortunately, these days, what he had, mainly the 5 range, is not even the most strongest thing we have. Now it's 6 range, right? We have Emblem Sigurd, we have Camilla, who have effectively 6 range, etc., etc. So just having 5 range doesn't immediately bring you over the top. That, in addition to the fact that these days, he can't really tank through things, and the miracle stuff he has, while still being pretty annoying, is pretty easily taken out by the modern day nukes. So yeah, I'm not going to discount Seliph completely, because you can still make him work. It'll be really hard in something like Summer's Duels, but again, like, you can make melee nukes theoretically work, and I guess the Miracle can be fine against, like, I guess, like, a pseudo frontline or something like that. I don't know. If someone could do that, that would be great, but yeah, I can see, like, again, a 0.1 reason to potentially use Seliph as opposed to the units currently in E and F. So yeah. Okay, next up is Brave Tiki. Oh, Brave Tiki. Do I even have to say anything about Brave Tiki? She's just bad. I was on copium on her release, but yeah, she was bad on release. She was bad after Refine, and she's bad now. So yeah, that'll be an E tier. I don't think I need to say anything about that. Especially since she's a dragon, right? Like, dragons just don't have that much good things right now. Like, yeah, you can have Barricade, but like beasts also have Barricade, and beasts get way more preferential treatment from IS than dragons. So yeah, unfortunate. All right, next we have is Brave Byleth, and I think similar to Brave Tiki, we can say with Brave Byleth, although unlike Brave Tiki, Brave Byleth was actually usable and good on release. Since release, though, she unfortunately can't really do her Vantage shtick that well due to, well, one, I was not really a big fan of Vantage, but that Vantage mainly relied on like speed preempt, and yeah, she is getting outspeeded these days. So yeah, that'll be an E. All right, next we have is Brave Male Robin, and I think we are past the point where we think Rally Spectrum is the super powerful thing we thought it was on release, because special jump is just super common these days, like, and not even just that, but special jump support. So Brave Male Robin doesn't have that as the it factor anymore of what distinguishes Brave Male Robin from like any other unit that can do the same. And it's not as if special jumping is that strong to begin with now. These days you want to like have true damage support or flat damage reduction support. That's how you provide offensive or defensive boosts. And so yeah, the special jump that Rally Spectrum has is no longer that great. And after that, like once that's done, like there's not really any reason to use Brave Male Robin. Like he's not doing anything else. So yeah, definitely in E tier. All right, next we have is Soren. And Soren, I think it's still really interesting. Soren still has a use case in modes like Summer's Duels. Being able to give someone a signed decoy is still extremely strong in a mode like Summer's Duels, because again, Summer's Duels, you have the one save restriction, right? But with Soren, you can bypass that to have two saves, essentially. So you can protect both far save and near save, which is really, really strong right now in this high threat range meta, where you have to worry about both ranged and melee threats from things like Yunaka and Camilla and Eirika and stuff like that, Emblem Eirika. And so Soren is like a great simplifier in that sense, in that by having Soren on your team, you don't have to worry about juggling the threats. You could just protect yourself in the Soren ball and then be able to move safely in and then pick apart the opponent's team that way. So Soren actually is still really, really good. Now, in the last SDS, he wasn't as useful just due to the map and the skills and stuff like that. But I mean, there are people using him in SDR. I saw the last SDR, Soren balls were used legitimately by a significant amount. It was part of a pasta, I think, from like the JP community. Yeah, I think it was the JP community. So his ability to, again, be able to allow you to bring 2 saves instead of just 1, especially in the high threat range meta we have right now, is just really, really good. So yeah, Soren is also going into S. Honestly, is he better than Brave Chrom? I think it really depends, but I think Soren, like, you can use in SDR more easily than Chrom. So I think I'll have Soren in S, yeah. I think this looks about right. Now, granted, Soren's going to get refined soon, so, you know, even stronger than what he is currently. All right, next we have his Brave Gullveig, and Brave Gullveig, I loved you so much on release. You were like the most fun I had with Gale Force for a while, like literally on every team in my Ether raids. Nowadays, unfortunately, she doesn't have really the damage. What I used to do is use AoE Gullveig to do the Gale Force. But now, with units like Hector and skills like Breath of Life, doing AoE Gale Force is not as strong because generally the opponent's team can heal with Breath of Life or Hector. So yeah, unfortunately that niche sort of died. And it's also, compared to our current Gale Force units, it's harder for Brave Gullveig to go in, as opposed to like Emblem Sigurd, who just has 6 range naturally, or Camilla, who can just warp in and have 6 range naturally, right? With this, you have to run Celica Ring, and unfortunately, like, in combination with like the damage and stuff, Gullveig unfortunately can't really hang on with the current crop of Gale Force units. That being said, like, you can make it work, especially if you do something with like Elm or something like that. So I don't think she's E, but yeah, unfortunately, where should I put her? She's going to be in D, because again, there are ways you can, like, with great difficulty, use her, kind of. Yeah, I think this looks right. Okay, next we have is Brave Corrin, and I do think Brave Corrin still can work as a save. You have to run like Shield Fighter, granted, but like it can work. And she like applies the stones, which I guess like can help the team. So, and she can run like Barricade or Higher Ground or Lower Ground. So she got that going for herself as like a Dragon save or like a Beast save. So yeah, those are like some things you can do with Corrin. It's not great, right? But I think it is workable. Yeah. So I think she's in C. Probably like here, actually. I'm not gonna say that she's gonna like tank everything, but she can put in the work if you like have the correct build and stuff. Like, it's going to be a little bit cope, but it can work, I guess. I definitely wouldn't recommend it these days, but you know, it's fine. Okay, next we have is Brave Bernadetta. We're actually getting into the CYL 8 units now. Let's go. Brave Bernadetta is still the one of 2 units only that gives out Paranoia. And Paranoia is actually a pretty good effect. Being able to have just Vantage onto your allies is really, really useful. Granted, I'm not the biggest like enthusiast of Vantage, but I can see how that can make like in something like Summer's Duels really annoying if like your opponent can't really safely take out your team. And you can checkmate someone if you like maneuver correctly a lot easier with Paranoia active as opposed to not. So she does still provide pretty good support. Her nuking is definitely suspect, but I don't think you're really running Brave Bernadetta for the nuking. It's mainly for the Paranoia support and the rest of the support. That said, you also have Winter Bernadetta now that I believe does a better job than Brave Bernadetta. It's just extremely expensive. So there is still a reason to use Brave Bernadetta if you don't want to like invest into Winter Bernadetta. But I definitely say that she's not at the level as like Soren or Chrom is in terms of like value in something like Summer's Duels, because for me personally, if I don't have Brave Bernadetta, it's totally fine. Like I can totally live without Brave Bernadetta on my teams. I don't think the value she has is that great, but again, it is still good value. So I definitely think it's an A tier. All right, next we have is Brave Robin. And Brave Robin is really interesting because when she came out, she was the only unit that can apply ice, which immediately shot her up in value. Nowadays, we have Ice Lock, which is a lot more easily slotted in. Like you have healers like Loki and Sakura who can just easily slot that in and then apply the ice. So it might seem that Brave Female Robin has lost all of her like reasons to use, like usage reasons. But no, there are still people slotting in Brave Female Robin over those Ice Lock options. To the point where Brave Female Robin is the most used CYL 8 unit in the last SDS. Now, why is that the case? Why is Brave Female Robin hanging on? Because she still does something that only she can do so far, and that is being able to apply the ice while at the same time repoing a unit or positional assisting a unit in. Right? You can do that at the same time. So it's a lot faster to like set up turn 1 with Brave Female Robin over someone with Ice Lock. Because with someone with Ice Lock, say Sakura, you would have to have someone else repo in, say, Yunaka into range, and then Sakura will then apply the ice. That takes like 2 actions, which is really, really slow on turn 1 and leaves that Yunaka exposed for that one, turn, which in something like turn 1 SDS or SDR, that can mean the difference between a win and a loss. Meanwhile, Brave Female Robin, you don't need to worry about having to apply Ice Lock later. You can just repo in Yunaka in immediately, and then the ice will surround Yunaka, and it's perfectly fine. She'll be protected. The ice will protect Yunaka. And so, Brave Female Robin is just a lot faster to be able to like set up your nukes, move in your nukes, while at the same time being protected on turn 1. The trade-off to that, of course, is that on turn 2 onwards, Brave Female Robin is a lot more awkward to use with the ice. But in general, turn 1 is the most important turn. Especially nowadays when like going first versus going second does have a huge impact. Brave Female Robin can mitigate the impacts of going second because, again, she can move a unit in while at the same time protecting them. So it's not as important to go turn 1, like go first anymore. So yeah, those are the reasons why I think Brave Female Robin is still the most used CYL8 unit and why she still has a niche that only she can do and is still really valuable. Granted, again, she is not the easiest to slot in to a team. It is a lot easier to slot in Loki or Sakura, but there are people that can legitimately make it work. And so for that reason, I'll put it in A. I think above Brave Bernadetta, again, just because she has that thing that only she can do so far. All right, next up we have is Brave Alfonse. Oh, Brave Alfonse. I remember when he got released last year, and everyone thought he was the best. He was going to take over the meta. Great talent, is going to like steamroll everything. And hey, if he's not great now, he will be great in the future because he could just keep up with the stats. IS is going to introduce more sources of great talent, and yeah, Alfonse is going to stomp. That is not the case, if you can't tell. I would say Brave Alfonse right now is honestly the worst of the CYL8 unit. That doesn't mean he's bad though, especially compared to the units on this list. Like, he's still a 4 movement cav, so 5 range cav. That is very bulky, and you do need to make sure your you are able to deal with him in something like Summer's Duels, you can't just like have him stay there for so long, because otherwise there are potential to checkmate. But the problem with Brave Alfonse is that he just takes so long to actually ramp up to the point where he becomes this huge like problem to deal with. And so in a mode like Summer's Duels, where the most important turns are the earlier turns, yeah, it's just not as useful to have that like great talent ramp up. And you might say, oh, well, you just need to hit his special and yeah, he'll be fine. But that's really hard because there's a lot of scowl effects that relies on Alfonse actually killing and not dying on retaliation, which again, since he doesn't have the stats yet, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do that. And yeah, in general, like, it's just really hard to make Alfonse actually work. Now, again, I do think he's better than a lot of these units. So by virtue of that, he's going into B tier. You can make him work in something like Summer's Duels, but yeah, definitely not a unit I would immediately try to summon to slot in, to say the very least. All right, last but certainly not least, we have Felix. And Felix, I think, used to be the best CYL 8 unit in his heyday. Having those extra action is really good for action eco economy in Summer's Duels, and obviously in Ether Raids, him being a very good Gale Forcer was just a given. I basically used him since release to like do Gale Force clears until like the Lin Sniper meta turned up. So yeah, that was his heyday. But unfortunately now, Felix, unfortunately, there's two main problems. One, he doesn't do enough damage. Most of his damage comes from things outside of true damage. And as we talked about, true damage is the most important thing for a nuke to have in order to be able to beat through the flat damage reduction of the tanky tanks that we have. And so Brave Felix not having that really hurts his tanking capabilities. So yeah, that's one thing. And the second thing is that his playstyle, Gale Force in general, is not that good anymore. Again, we're in the Lin Sniper meta, where like you could just like sit back and snipe things with Lin Ring and Lin and that sort of thing. So there's like no reason for, you know, Gale Force and Felix to like go in and like do your proper Gale Force strats. Again, this might change with the introduction of Baldur and Hother, but as of now, I haven't seen, or well, I haven't ran into any Baldur or Hother teams yet, so I can't exactly say, right? But even if we return back to a Gale Force meta, I still don't think Brave Felix really has the damage to be able to break through the tanks that we have seen so far. So it's really just the damage that Brave Felix is slacking on, which is why he's not like still an A. That in combination with the fact that the sort of meta shifts that happen with the Lin Ring Sniper teams, and also in Summer's Duels where you really don't want to like stay there, you want to go back with like Sakura, like hit and run sort of strategies in SD, makes Felix's niche not as good as it once was. Again, you can still make it work, which is why he's not here. But yeah, I think Felix belongs in B tier, probably above Alfonse, because like Felix still has the action eco Gale Force stuff that makes him stand out. But yeah. So yeah, this is my tier list of the CYL units we've had so far. Yeah, very, very bottom heavy because unfortunately most of these Brave units I don't think have really kept up with the times. That being said, we still do have some standouts like Chrom, for instance, Soren, who's going to get his refine, which is kind of crazy. So there are still some pretty nice gems, but yeah, overall pretty bottom heavy. And yeah, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on this tier list and whether or not you agree or disagree. Let me know your rankings down below. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Again, if you did enjoy, please be sure to like, subscribe to the bell, all the jazz to our channel. Only takes 5 seconds to subscribe or choose this episode on. I really do appreciate all kind of support. And yeah, nothing else to do but to be on the lookout for the CYL 9 units and what they will have. With the Hero Fest and stuff, I think it's going to be a big one. So I'm very excited to see what IS has in store for us. And yeah, hope you all have an amazing rest of the day and see you all next time. Bye, everyone.